My name is Julia Gorey, and today I'm discussing an overview of the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Human Research Protections. What is SACHRP and what should you know about it? Well, this webinar is hoping to address these questions. What is a Federal Advisory Committee? How does it function? What role does SACHRP serve within HHS? How are SACHRP members selected? Why are SACHRP recommendations relevant for your institution? And what's the difference between SACHRP recommendations and OHRP guidance? First, let's look at where SACHRP sits in the HHS structure. SACHRP is administratively located within the Office of the Director at the Office for Human Research Protections. SACHRP is sourced and staffed through OHRP. SACHRP reports to the Secretary of HHS through the Assistant Secretary for Health. SACHRP is a Federal Advisory Committee. Federal Advisory Committees are governed by the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA, which was enacted in 1972 to ensure that advice provided to government agencies is objective and accessible. FACA specifies the establishment and operation of advisory committees. For example, committees must be chartered. SACHRP's charter must be renewed every 2 years, and meetings must be announced in advance and open to the public. All materials must be publicly available in addition to the meeting minutes. For SACHRP, this means that a docket is established on regulations.gov, and the number of that docket is widely publicized in advance of the meeting. All meeting minutes are available upon request to SACHRP at HHS.gov. Finally, SACHRP issues consensus advice and rarely issues minority opinions. I want to point out the availability of a public resource, and this is the FACA database administered through the General Services Administration. This database has information on all federal advisory committees. It's updated annually, it can be searched by fiscal year, and has information such as membership, charter, budget, recommendations, authorizing legislation. All that information is here. This is a great public resource. What does SACHRP do? SACHRP provides recommendations to HHS on a wide variety of matters related to human subjects protections. Over the years, some of the agenda topics have been very broad. Sometimes they're very narrow. They've ranged from topics such as justice as an ethical concept in human subjects protections to more narrower topics such as challenges among sponsors, clinical trial sites, and study subjects. All SACHRP recommendations can be found here on the SACHRP website through the OHRP homepage. SACHRP recommendations can be searched by year, by keyword, or by topic. Now, briefly, a few words regarding SACHRP's history within HHS. In 2000, oversight of HHS human subjects protection was moved from the Office for Protection from Research Risks, or OPRR, which was created in 1972 and was part of NIH, to the Office for Human Research Protections, which is under the Office of the Secretary, HHS. In June 2000, HHS established the National Human Research Protections Advisory Committee, or NRPAC, to provide HHS with expert advice and recommendations on human subject protection matters. The charter for this committee was allowed to expire, and on January 3, 2003, SACHRP replaced NRPAC. SACHRP has similar responsibilities, but a more specific charge. Let's look at that charge in a little bit of detail. Here we see language from SACHRP's charter. The committee shall advise, consult with, and make recommendations on matters pertaining to the continuance and improvement of functions within the authority of the Department of Health and Human Services directed toward protections for human subjects in research. The language goes on to say that in addition, The committee shall be responsible for reviewing selected ongoing work and planned activities of the Office for Human Research Protections and other offices or agencies within HHS responsible for human subjects protection. So now let's discuss a little bit more nitty-gritty information about SACHRP meetings. SACHRP meets 3 times per year in a publicly accessible format. That might mean that it's virtual, a Zoom call, or it might mean that it's an in-person meeting here in Rockville. SACHRP has 11 voting members who serve 3 to 4-year terms, and it also has non-voting ex officio members who represent HHS common rule agencies who can participate in the discussion. The agenda is set by OHRP in consultation with the chair. How are SACHRP members chosen? Nominations are solicited through a Federal Register notice or other referral to OHRP. Nominees submit their CV and a letter declaring their willingness to serve if selected. Nominees may be nominated by others or self-nominated. Nominees are reviewed by OHRP based on the anticipated needs of the community's expertise, as well as geographic, gender, ethnic, community, and work sector diversity. Once selected by OHRP, draft nominees must then be approved by HHS and undergo rigorous scrutiny, including financial disclosure and ethics training prior to final confirmation. Why are SACHRP recommendations important? SACHRP advisory documents are the result of considerable committee effort, deliberation, and consensus building among well-respected experts and common rule agency representatives. Recommendations are a direct line of communication with HHS aimed at informing HHS and OHRP decision-making and policy interpretation, and may be considered when developing OHRP guidance. Recommendations often represent institutional best practices and practical points to consider, crafted with careful attention to regulatory considerations. And as I've mentioned before, recommendations are posted on the OHRP website. Are recommendations the same as OHRP guidance? No, they are not. The content of SACHRP recommendations is advisory and does not represent the official views or policies of OHRP or the Department of Health and Human Services. I want to close by highlighting again the website for SACHRP, where you can find much more information regarding membership, subcommittees, charters, and recommendations, and also point to the SACHRP email address, SACHRP@HHS.gov. If you want to request copies of minutes or have comments or questions, this is the email address that you want. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this has been helpful.